The first thing she noticed was the heat. Not the kind of winter chill she was used to back in Moscow, but a heavy, humid warmth that seemed to cling to her clothes, her skin, her very thoughts. Elena had arrived in Manila after a long flight, the clouds below giving way to a sprawling, chaotic city that hummed with life, laughter, and the occasional blaring horn of a jeepney. She stepped out of the airport and was immediately embraced by the tropical air, as if the country itself were exhaling a welcome she didn't yet understand. She had come to the Philippines to escape something, though she wasn't entirely sure what. Perhaps it was the relentless gray of Russian winters that made her feel frozen inside. Or maybe it was the sharp edges of her life back home, the routine, the expectations, the pressure of a world that demanded perfection. She had booked a small inn in northern Luzon in the province of Nueva Vizcaya, far from the city, hoping to find silence, perhaps clarity. What she did not expect was the way the mountains seemed alive, even when nothing moved. On her second morning, Elena woke to the sound of rain tapping gently on the metal roof above her room. It wasn't heavy, just persistent enough to make her think of the Siberian drizzle she knew so well. But when she peeked out of the window, she saw a scene she could not have imagined. A rolling expanse of green, mountains rising like giants on the horizon, their peaks shrouded in mist. There was a rhythm to them, a quiet steadiness that felt almost sacred. She would later learn that these were the Sierra Madre, the first line of defense against the storms that swept across Luzon. But at that moment, they simply looked majestic, serene, and unknowable. The locals greeted her with smiles that carried a warmth she had not anticipated. A woman at the small market called out, "Magandang umaga po!" Good morning, her tone polite but friendly. Elena stumbled through the words she knew from her guidebook, muttering "Magandang umaga" awkwardly, and received a soft laugh in return. There was a rhythm to the language, a gentle musicality that she would never master, but one that immediately began to teach her patience. Her first trek into the mountains came the following day. She hired a local guide named Mang Tony, a wiry man with skin weathered by decades of sun and rain, and eyes that seemed to have memorized every slope and river of the Cordilleras. As they ascended the narrow dirt path, Elena struggled to match his pace, her lungs burning with the unfamiliar effort. "Sierra Madre," Mang Tony said, pointing toward the ridge that stretched endlessly into the horizon. "Tagapagtanggol ng Luzon, protector of the land." Elena blinked. "Protector? Of the land?" "Yes," he said, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. "The mountains. They take the storm so the people can live." She laughed softly, a little nervously. The idea of mountains as guardians sounded like something from a fairy tale, a story her grandmother might have told her when she was a child. Yet as she looked at the Sierra Madre, the mist rolling along their peaks like a curtain, she felt a shiver, not from the cold but from something deeper, as though the mountains themselves had recognized her presence. That night she wrote in her journal, struggling to find the words in English, "There is a rhythm here I do not understand, a heartbeat that is not human. The mountains, they wait, they watch, they breathe, and in that breathing, the land sleeps safely." The next morning, Elena woke to a heavier rain. She peered outside and saw the mountains again, now partially hidden behind thick gray clouds. Mang Tony had warned her. Storms in these parts came suddenly, sometimes without warning, and the Sierra Madre bore the brunt first. She imagined the wind smashing against the jagged ridges, the rain hammering the slopes, and somehow, the lowlands below remained untouched. She began to understand the truth in his words. These mountains were not just formations of rock and soil. They were protectors, ancient and steadfast. Elena spent the following days moving from the Sierra Madre toward the Caraballo Range, the bridge between the coastal plains and the towering Cordilleras. Each step brought a new lesson in humility and observation. In a small village along the way, she watched farmers navigate the rain-soaked terraces with careful balance. She marveled at the bamboo houses perched on stilts, so fragile and yet so strong, bending but not breaking under the wind. One evening, sitting outside a humble home as the storm rolled past, she spoke with Lola Maria, a grandmother who had lived in the mountains her entire life. "We have the guardians," Lola said simply, her eyes reflecting the candlelight. "They watch over us. When a typhoon comes, we pray, but the mountains carry it away first. Without them, we would not survive." Elena was silent for a long time. She wanted to ask how it was possible, how mountains could protect so fiercely, but somehow words felt inadequate. Instead, she listened to the wind rustling through the trees, watched the rain drip from the leaves, and began to feel the truth of it in her bones. These were not myths, they were reality. Lived every day, seen in the survival of the people, the resilience of the land. She began to walk the mountains alone, leaving Mangtoni behind at times, and felt a mixture of fear and exhilaration. The forest was alive. She heard the subtle movements of birds, the distant rumble of small landslides, the whisper of wind over ridges. One evening, as the sun broke through a clearing, illuminating the Caraballo Range in golden light, Elena felt a wave of gratitude and wonder she could not name. The mountains were guardians, yes, but also teachers. They demanded respect, patience, and a willingness to notice what was usually invisible. In the following week, Elena witnessed the first major storm of the season. She had positioned herself in a village at the base of the Sierra Madre, curious and apprehensive. Rain lashed the earth and wind howled as if the mountains themselves were speaking in a language she could not understand. From her vantage point, she watched the ridges absorb the storm, taking its full force with a grace that left her breathless. The village was wet but safe. Houses remained intact. Rice fields spared the worst of the deluge. Elena wept silently, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she had seen. Back home, storms had only left sorrow and ruin. Here, she realized, nature was not merely a force to endure, it was a partner in survival. The mountains were more than stone and soil. They were living protectors, ancient beings whose work was invisible to the casual eye, and in that realization, Elena felt a change in herself. She had come to the Philippines searching for escape, for a reprieve from her past life, but she had found something greater: connection, understanding, and a deep respect for forces larger than herself. The mountains taught patience, resilience, and humility, not through words, but through their very presence. That night, she wrote again in her journal, "I came seeking quiet. I found guardians. I came seeking freedom. I found belonging. In the heartbeat of these mountains, I hear the pulse of the people and the land alike. I am small, but I am part of something vast and enduring." Elena woke to the sound of birds calling over mist-laden valleys, the rain from the previous storm reduced to gentle drizzles. The air smelled of wet earth and moss, a scent that seemed alive, almost sacred. Today, she was moving deeper into the Cordilleras, where the mountains rose higher, sharper, and wilder. Mangtoni had warned her, "Here, the mountains are not just guardians, they are ancestors." She did not fully understand what he meant, but as she followed the narrow footpaths winding through rice terraces, she began to sense something beyond sight. The terraces clung to the slopes like green ribbons, their edges glinting with rainwater, reflecting the soft light of early morning. Villagers worked the paddies, their movements slow and deliberate, as if they too were in rhythm with the mountains. Elena tried to capture it with her camera, but the image on the screen felt flat, incapable of conveying the weight of the landscape, the gravity of history, and the quiet pulse of life that seemed to flow from the peaks themselves. By midday, they had reached a small ridge that overlooked the valley below. Clouds had gathered again, this time darker, heavier, hinting at another approaching storm. Elena's heart raced, not from fear, but from awe. From this vantage point, the Sierra Madre stretched behind her, a steady backbone absorbing the remnants of the previous typhoon. While ahead, the Cordilleras loomed, massive and unwavering, their peaks piercing the mist like cathedral spires. "Typhoon coming," Mangtoni said, his voice calm, almost reverent. "We can watch it from here. But remember, these mountains, they hold it back. You will see." As the first gusts of wind whipped around them, Elena felt the ridge tremble under her feet. Rain began to fall in sheets, and the clouds swirled violently, racing toward the lowlands. Yet from where she stood, she noticed something remarkable. The storm seemed to bend and shift around the mountains, their ridges slicing through the wind, diverting the rain, softening its fury. It was not magic, exactly, and yet it was something ancient, living, powerful. Elena shivered, not from cold, but from the recognition that she was witnessing something almost sacred. The mountains were alive in a way she had never known. They bore the brunt of nature's rage so that life could continue below. And the people, she realized, were aware. Their songs, their festivals, their prayers, they were all acknowledgments of this bond. Later that afternoon, Elena reached a village where preparations for a local festival were underway. Lanterns made of bamboo and paper swung gently in the breeze, their colors vivid against the gray skies. Children ran barefoot along narrow paths, laughing despite the rain, and women carried baskets of rice and fruits, their movements fluid and ceremonial. Mang Tony explained that the festival was in honor of the mountains, a celebration of protection, gratitude, and life itself. Elena watched as villagers performed traditional dances on the terraces, their bodies moving in patterns that echoed the shapes of the land. The rhythmic drum beats seemed to match the heartbeat of the mountains, a pulse she could feel vibrating through her chest. She asked a local elder, an old woman with silver hair and eyes like polished stones, about the meaning. "These mountains," the woman said, her voice calm but resonant, "they guard us, but they are also our kin. We dance to honor them, to remind ourselves of their watchfulness, and to give thanks for life they protect. Every storm, every season, we live with their guidance." Elena was struck by the depth of the bond. Back home, humans had conquered nature with concrete and steel, rarely acknowledging it, rarely pausing to recognize what it offered. Here, everything was intertwined: the people, the land, the mountains, the storms. Gratitude and respect were not abstract. They were lived every day through action, song, and ceremony. As night fell, the festival took on a magical quality. Lanterns glowed like scattered stars across the terraces, and the rain had softened to a mist. Elena followed the villagers to the ridge, where she could see the peaks of Cordilleras and Sierra Madre side by side. The wind carried the faint sound of drums and flutes down the valley. She closed her eyes and felt something shift inside her, a quiet reverence, a deep understanding that stretched beyond language. She remembered the first typhoon she had witnessed in Manila, the chaos and destruction it had left behind. Here, in the shadow of these guardians, storms were still fierce, but they were not cruel. The mountains absorbed, deflected, and shielded. The people survived not by fighting, but by recognizing and respecting the strength that surrounded them. Elena took a deep breath, letting the mist fill her lungs. She felt tears streaming down her cheeks, not from sadness, but from awe. She was a foreigner in a strange land, yet in this moment, she belonged, not because she was understood, but because she had witnessed the truth of connection between nature and humanity. The festival ended with a simple ritual. Villagers placed small offerings of rice, fruit, and candles at the base of stone markers along the terraces. Elena followed suit, placing a small piece of bread she had brought with her. She whispered a quiet prayer, not knowing if the mountains listened, but feeling as though they had already acknowledged her presence. That night, lying in her small guest house, Elena wrote in her journal, "I came searching for escape. I found guardians. I came seeking peace. I found a bond older than memory. The mountains are alive, and in their watchfulness, I see a lesson. Survival is not about domination, but respect. Gratitude, humility, and presence. These are the gifts they give silently to anyone willing to see." And as she drifted into sleep, she dreamed of the mountains, Sierra Madre, Cordilleras, and Caraballo, standing tall against an endless storm, unwavering, eternal. She no longer felt small. She felt connected, part of something vast and enduring, a witness to the guardians of Luzon, whose quiet power shaped the lives of everyone below. Elena woke to the low rumble of thunder, a sound that vibrated through the valley and into her chest. The sky had turned a heavy gray, swollen with clouds so dark they seemed to press down on the earth itself. Mang Tony appeared at the doorway of her small guest house, his expression calm but serious. "The typhoon is coming. Now we see the guardians at work." Her heart raced. She had seen storms before, even here, but something about today felt different. This was no ordinary rain. This was a force of nature moving with intent, testing the land, the people, and the mountains themselves. She grabbed her raincoat, but she felt almost silly in its bright red fabric, insignificant against the looming fury outside. The villagers were already preparing. Families carried baskets of food and supplies to higher terraces, children clinging to parents, dogs barking at the wind. The elders walked slowly to the edges of the terraces, carrying offerings, small bowls of rice, candles, flowers, while chanting prayers in soft rhythmic tones. Elena followed, feeling the pulse of the community and somehow of the mountains themselves. As they ascended a ridge overlooking the valley, the storm hit with full force. Rain pelted the earth in sheets, and gusts of wind twisted the trees like they were made of paper. Lightning tore across the sky, illuminating the jagged peaks of the Cordilleras, Sierra Madre, and Caraballo Range. Elena's breath caught in her throat. She could feel the mountains absorbing the storm's power, their slopes bending the wind, diverting the rain, protecting the villages below. Mang Tony stood beside her, silent as if simply observing the mountains' work. Elena's gaze traveled along the ridges. She could see the Sierra Madre taking the first strike, bending and cracking under the wind, but still standing, still shielding. The Caraballo Range acted like a bridge, channeling the storm's fury toward uninhabited ridges. The Cordilleras, tall and immovable, bore the final blow, their peaks disappearing in the sheets of rain but holding strong against the chaos. Tears streamed down Elena's face, partly from awe, partly from the realization of what she had been witnessing all along. These were not merely mountains. They were protectors, guardians, living and breathing, intertwined with the lives of the people they shielded. She thought of the festival from days ago, of the chants, the dances, the offerings. It all made sense now. The villagers' rituals were not superstition. They were acts of gratitude, acknowledgement, and respect for forces greater than themselves. As the storm raged, Elena noticed the villagers moving with precision, guiding animals, securing homes, chanting prayers. The elders led ceremonies on higher terraces, waving bamboo torches in intricate patterns, their voices rising and falling in harmony with the wind. The rhythm of their chants seemed to mirror the pulse of the mountains themselves, a heartbeat older than memory. Elena knelt, joining in silently, feeling the words resonate inside her, not as language but as connection. Hours passed, and gradually, the storm's fury lessened in the valley where Elena stood. The mountains had absorbed and deflected, sparing the people, the animals, and the crops from total destruction. She looked around at the villagers, wet, exhausted, yet smiling and laughing despite the ordeal. They were survivors, yes, but more than that. They were participants in a larger harmony, living in tune with guardians whose strength they had witnessed again and again. Elena's gaze lifted to the peaks, now partially revealed as the clouds began to thin. She could see how the storm had sculpted the landscape, how rivers had swelled and soil shifted, yet the terraces below remained largely untouched. The mountains had done what humans could not. They had borne the burden of nature so life could continue. In that moment, something inside Elena shifted completely. She understood that her own life, back in Moscow, had been full of storms she could not control. Failures, pressures, expectations, but she had faced them alone. Here, she saw the power of support, protection, and connection, not just between humans, but between humans and the land itself. She felt a deep humility, a recognition that survival was not about fighting against forces greater than oneself, but aligning with them, honoring them, and acting with respect and gratitude. As the sun began to break through the clouds, illuminating mist rising from the terraces, Elena felt a calm she had never known. She knelt in the wet grass, breathing in the misty air, and whispered a silent promise. She would carry this lesson wherever she went, a memory of guardians and gratitude, of resilience and humility. The mountains had shown her the path not by words, but through presence, strength, and silent teaching. The villagers began to celebrate the storm's passing, lighting small fires and singing songs that Elena could only hum along to. Children danced barefoot in puddles, elders nodded in approval, and the mountains stood watch, majestic and eternal. Elena joined in the dance, clumsy at first, but gradually moving with a sense of rhythm and belonging. She laughed fully, freely, feeling for the first time in years a sense of being at home in the world, not just in a place. That night, as she lay in her small guest house, Elena wrote the final words in her journal. "I came seeking peace, seeking escape, seeking clarity. I found guardians, I found connection, I found myself. These mountains teach patience, resilience, and humility. They are strength and they are love, silent but unyielding. I am small, yet part of something vast and enduring. The storm has passed, yet its lessons will stay with me forever." For the first time in her life, Elena felt truly present, fully alive, and deeply grateful. The mountains of Luzon had revealed their secret, not as legends or stories, but as living protectors of the land and its people. and in their guardianship. She had discovered a strength she had never known inside herself.